I'd like to take this opportunity to discuss the circle of fifths from groups of tones that sound good with each other. And this has been compiled into a circle of fifths. Okay, let's talk about two aspects here. One is, resonance, things that work well together, and then there's dissonance, things that seem to be just not as well gelled. They don't resonate well together. Rather darker tones and stuff like that we will consider dissonance. It creates tension, whereas resonance creates more of a relaxing type atmosphere. Okay, well, let's assume now that you have some chord knowledge. This is going to be really important, some basic chords like G, E minor, C, A minor, F, D, E, A, all that good stuff. Let's assume you have a knowledge of that. That's important because it's really going to be of any benefit to you. Also, bar chords, it'll even be better if you know your bar chords like, F sharp minor, E flat minor, all that sort of thing. Anyway, that's further down the road. In case you don't know those chords yet, eventually you'll probably learn them, hopefully. Anyway, let's start off at the top of the wheel. We see a C up here. Okay. Now, if we go in a clockwise motion, we see a G. Okay. Counterclockwise, we see an F. Now, I'm going to mention that counterclockwise is what we call the circle of fourths. That'll become clear further down the road. Okay, now let's take a look at the relationship between C, G, and F, and what they sound like with each other. They're actually going to sound pretty resonant. C, G, F, C. As you can see, they sound like maybe part of a song, like they should fit together, and they do. Okay, let's move one step ahead, clockwise, to the G. And that means we'll go from G to D, and then on the other side of G to C. Now let's see how these sound together. G, D, C, G, D, C. See how that works? Okay, let's move ahead. Let's try D, A, and G. D, A, you'll notice that was the same chord progression in a different key as the previous chord progression we started in G, and etc. C. Okay, this is how this stuff relates. Now, I want to mention that if you go across the wheel, all the way across the other side of the wheel, let's start with C, for example, and go to a G flat. Let's see what that sounds like. C, G flat. Now that creates dissonance. It's a much darker chord progression. And it's very useful too. It creates an atmosphere when that's necessary. You want to create that kind of tension. Okay, enough said there. Now let's talk about the inner wheel, where you see the minor chords. Same type of deal. Those are related to each other. Those are called relative minors, by the way. In other words, A minor is the relative minor to C. E minor, relative minor to G. B minor, relative minor to D, etc. You can go around the wheel. Now these minor chords give you a variety of feel in a chord progression. For example, let's try C, A minor, C, A minor. Now we can add other chords next to it too. We could add F, G, and we'll go back and forth between the C, A minor, F, and G. C, A minor, F, G, C, A minor. Sounds familiar, doesn't it? fairly retro, or at least I call it retro, chord progression. That's used very commonly in classic rock, balladies type stuff. Okay, let's take a look at some of the other minor chords that's close to the C and are associated with both the G and the F, like D minor and the E minor. Now let's add all these together and see what happens. We'll start here with the C. C, F, D minor, G, minor, F, C, A minor. They all kind of work together. They begin to tell a story. Okay, we can take this thing any way around the wheel, and the closer chords to your root note, in other words, or root key, well, for example, G would be our key, or the root note, or root chord in this sense, because we're using chords. Any of the chords next to it and the minor wheel beneath it that are close physically are going to sound good when you put them together. So looking at that wheel, you can see there's a lot of options you have. And it creates, just a variety of opportunities you can use to create. If you're a songwriter or a musician of any sort, this kind of stuff is really handy. It gives you a framework to begin with to, compose your ideas. Once again, though, if you want to create more of a tense or darker progression, you can go across the wheel. Let's see, let's do G and D flat. G, D flat, dissonance, a little bit darker, huh? Okay. Anyway, this is a basic approach to the circle of fifths. It's a very handy tool for creativity, and also just learning it. You'll develop an ear for learning songs that you may hear. You go, okay, all right, that song, I find it's in the key of D. Let's try some of the other chords here that are closely associated. An F sharp minor. Oh yeah, that kind of sounds like the song I'm trying to learn. And you'll find that this is just a really handy tool. Definitely a must for guitar players, piano players, anybody really learning the circle of fifths. I hope this will be a useful tool and an opportunity for you to expand your musical horizons. And I wish you a good day.